This is Raythe from Raythe Reign. I'm an author of serialized gay romance fiction. Every week on this podcast, I'll be reading a chapter from one of my gay fantasy shifter serials called Raythe Reign. I'll explain at the break how you can find out more about this story and others I write. So let's get to it. Chapter 133, Justice and Plushies. 3 months later. The top news story of the day is the sentencing of a majority of the leaders of Humans First and their surprising allies, many of the upper echelons of the faith, the religion that worships the spirits, the pretty, perky blonde newscaster said in a faux, dark tone. She turned in her seat to face the second camera and continued, "Just to refresh our viewers, it was discovered that these unlikeliest of allies came together to form a plot to work with a creature known as the Behemoth, to enslave all of humanity and shifter kind." Her smile grew slightly more strained. The plot was discovered, and a brave defense was mounted by Claw and citizens alike, while the dragon shifters battled the horrible creature in the spirit realm. The Behemoth was defeated, but those that helped it gain entry into our realm had yet to be dealt with. That ends today.
Oh, right you are, Claire. And it's not just in Valerius and Caden's territory that such sentencing is going on, is it?
Her male counterpart with dark, shellacked hair and a winsome smile asked as he squared papers before him. "No, indeed, Tom," Claire answered, again having to tone down her normal perkiness due to the seriousness of the subject matter. This was a worldwide plot that was discovered by all of the dragon shifters when they came to greet the newest member of their clan, our very own King Caden. Not one territory was spared housing the now convicted criminals. The courts of every territory acted together under the authority of Supreme Court Justice St. John, under a framework of international law. This is the first time such a matter has been tried in this way, but as the crime was international, it was determined that such legal proceedings would be international too. Claire continued, "It's a sign of the times, as the dragon shifters have determined to work together instead of sticking to their own territories."
And I hear that it was such a success, this won't be the last time such interterritorial matters are decided this way.
Tom popped in. "Right again you are, Tom," Claire chirruped.
"As you said, the majority of Humans First and the Faith were arrested, tried, and convicted of crimes against humanity and shifters. What has happened to those two organizations?" Tom asked.
Claire faced the first camera. Humans First has completely imploded. People who had any role in the organization have completely disassociated from it. Talk of any form of organizing based upon species has gone into the darker corners of the internet. No one wants to be associated publicly with what is now seen as a deeply hypocritical and dangerous movement. Though some say that the outward complaints of Humans First, humans being treated as second-class citizens in a shifter-run world, shouldn't be turned into a verboten topic, many acknowledge that the group has tainted all such believers.
Speaking of believers, Claire, what about the faith? I've noticed that the temple in my neighborhood has closed, and no one is wearing the white robes that I so often saw in the city, Tom remarked.
Your observations are correct, Tom. Like Humans First, the revelation that many in the leadership of the faith were involved in searching out and helping the Behemoth come into this world for centuries before the shifters even revealed themselves has stunned many adherents of the religion, Claire explained, her expression slightly waxy, as she reached up as if for a necklace that was no longer there. "It's almost like discovering, as Christian, you were worshipping Satan secretly all along." Noticing this, Tom stated,
"You used to be a member of the faith and all that long ago, weren't you, Claire?"
Claire's eyes narrowed. "And I believe I saw you at a Humans First meeting, Tom, when I was reporting on them."
"Yes, well, that was just research."
Tom cleared his throat and squared the pages of the script in front of him.
"I really wasn't a member."
"Right, Tom, I'm sure that's true." Claire turned back to the camera, her tight smile only relaxing a little bit. "In any event, both groups have taken a major hit.
While it is unlikely that people will stop worshiping the spirits or believing that humanity is getting the short end of the stick, the two major organizations that organized around those beliefs have been wounded, perhaps mortally. The Dragon Shifters are trying to offer people a new way of going forward, though, Claire, Tom said with another throat clearing. King Valerius has established a shifter and human council. These individuals come from all walks of life and will work on various issues that have been voted on by the populace, issues such as equal justice, systemic prejudice, and more. And King Caden has made this a cornerstone of his rule as well. He's been reaching out to unlikely people in the communities to hear their thoughts. Most certainly he has. The White and Black Dragon Kings have hit the ground running since the Behemoth's defeat, Claire added. It appears that the Justice is speaking. Oh, and is that Grant Bryce standing behind him? As our viewers may recall, Caden's father is one of the powerful clerks working for the Supreme Court. Let's listen in, Tom. The shot changed to show Justice St. John, who was flanked by various high court justices, Grant Bryce, and others of the human shifter fraternity of lawyers, judges, and advocates from across the globe. They all stood outside the impressive United States Supreme Court building, which had been relocated to Reach instead of Washington, D.C., soon after the war. Despite the building being only 30 years old, there was a sense of grandeur about its ionic columns, wide stone steps, and carved bronze doors. The sunlight shone down upon Justice St. John. His black robes fluttered in the wind behind him like raven's wings. He smiled a little benignly as he stared out at the crowd of reporters and onlookers with keen, dark eyes. He waited for the crowd to settle and grow quiet without making any move whatsoever. Raven shifters were not the most impressive of animals, but some of them radiated a calming, commanding effect, and Justice St. John was among those. Good afternoon, everyone. I am pleased to see you all here today. The business of justice is in everyone's interest, and I am honored to have been chosen to inform the people of the determination of judges, lawyers, and advocates all across this globe against those who are found to have conspired with the Behemoth. Justice St. John spoke in a strong, clear voice. Grant Bryce handed the judge a sheet of paper, then that he spread out before him on the lectern, and swept over it with a black gaze. He nodded as he briefly perused it. He looked up at the crowd once more. Not everyone participated in this conspiracy with the same knowledge or understanding, nor did everyone commit the acts, such as participating in the many bombings, kidnappings, and assaults. We have laws in many lands that would have ignored those differences in order to discourage any participation in such evil acts, Justice St. John patiently explained. But King Caden, the White Dragon Shifter, and Iolaire spoke in earnest for mercy on behalf of those who cooperated and showed genuine remorse for their actions. After hearing their plea, this court and courts across the globe were moved to show appropriate mercy, but not to dilute the justice for those harmed by their actions. Justice St. John lifted the sheaf of papers that Grant Bryce had handed him. This document, a copy of which will be online at the International Court website, lists the punishments for every single party that was found guilty of crimes against humanity and shifters by aiding and abetting the Behemoth. There were frantic mumblings as reporters were urging their compatriots back of the studio to get that up on the monitors right away. There were flashes as pictures were taken of the justice holding up the paper. Later, there would be headlines that identified this historic event. Justice St. John lowered the paper. Now, some territories still recognize the death penalty as an appropriate form of punishment for crimes of the nature and viciousness that characterize these crimes. Other territories are intent on rehabilitation, and others on punishment. More flashes as they took in the justice with his black-gloved hands on the podium that looked rather like talons in that moment, even though his expression was mild. We had to find a framework that would balance all of these positions so that all would sign onto the eventual result, Justice St. John stated. So the death penalty was taken off the table first. Questions were shouted at the justice. But what about those families of victims that wanted to see an eye for an eye? Shouldn't their desires have more weight than that of other territories that were not as impacted? One reporter yelled. Another added, what about the individuals who were kidnapped by these people, whose bodies were even used by the Behemoth, and who are now without their souls? What justice can there be for them? And there are fears that these people's souls won't be reborn either, and are stuck in the spirit realm. How can incarceration ever be enough for them? Another shouted. Justice St. John listened carefully to the questions. He appeared somber and gray. He didn't try to speak again until the flurry of questions was over. The crowd grew silent once more. Justice can sometimes seem a thin, bare branch compared to the wrongs that have been done, he said calmly. I would argue that nothing can truly address the wounds that these people and many others have done over time. Even death for death is not truly enough, because one could argue that the death of an innocent is worth so much more than that of a criminal. Punishment alone will never meet the wrongs done, so that is hardly justice. The justice's black-eyed gaze swept the crowd, and he seemed to be seeing beyond them. It was not known how old Justice St. John was. There were rumors that he had lived when Mesopotamia thrived and had a different name then, one that some might recognize today. But he never spoke of it. Yet in this moment, people could hear the call of the ages in his voice. Rehabilitation is not always possible either. People resist acknowledging their wrongs or changing because of approbation. And despite seeing examples of what will happen if one goes against the law, deterrence is hardly completely successful, as we have and will continue to have criminals, Justice St. John went on. So both punishment and rehabilitation are flawed, as are all things. He smiled, but with the understanding of his own inability to fix all that was wrong with the world, with the law he clearly loved. The defendant, and how he or she or they react to their punishment, therefore, is not perhaps the measure of justice, he explained. As a society, we should not be measuring our justice by its effects on criminals, but on how it reflects our values, how it reflects on us, and how we wish our society to be. The crowd was quiet except for the click of cameras and the whistle of the wind. The Behemoth sought to make us into slaves, as vessels of its chosen followers, to displace our souls and end our being in the wheel of life, Justice St. John said, as he held up a fist and opened it up quickly, as if to show a soul leaving a body. It tricked all into thinking its plan was something quite different, longing to be powerful, wanting to be on top, desiring to have respect. All of these things have motivated the defendants. We can understand these things, even if we would never do what they did to try and attain them. But none among them understood the Behemoth's true monstrous plan. So you're saying that they didn't know the Behemoth meant to use all of us, that they should be treated less harshly? A reporter called. What about those that set the bombs? Another added. Justice St. John nodded. Yes, as to the first. As to the second, those involved in the bombings have had that calculated into their sentence. What I would simply ask of all of you and your viewers is to contemplate that nothing we do now can undo the past. All we can do is guard against a similar future. But also, let us not become a world that seeks only revenge, for that way lies madness. That way is not our way. Hi guys, it's Raythe, author and narrator of the gay dragon shifter fiction podcast, Raythe Reign. This story ends at 140 chapters, which means that the last episode is coming very soon. But don't worry, I am turning another of my serial stories into the next season of this podcast. And the best way to find out what it will be is to subscribe to my YouTube channel. After the last Raythe Reign episode,
Watch for the post-story live stream, beautiful new artwork, and trailers for the new story, and maybe even some behind-the-scenes content. I am sad to let Dragon's Reign go, but very excited to bring you the next chapter, so to speak, of paranormal gay romance. Just as St. John made to turn away from the podium, the reporters were again shouting questions at the top of their lungs, but only one reporter's question got through to the justice, who turned to answer it. The question was, "What about Jasper Hawes? Tell us what his sentence is." Just as St. John turned back to the podium, helped by Grant Bryce, he fixed his steady raven shifter eyes upon them. Jasper Hawes, as the leader of Humans First, inflamed people's prejudices. He stoked the fires of hatred. He took legitimate harms and turned them into fuel for prejudice and distrust. And ironically, he wanted to be a shifter in order to rule in the way he claimed shifters already did. He led so many people astray. Because of this, the harshest sentence possible was awarded by unanimous verdict. Jasper Hawes will be in prison for the rest of his life. The justice turned away from the podium for the last time, ignoring the pleas of the reporters to answer just one more question. The program turned back to the studio where Claire and Tom were staring at the video of the justice. Both of them pulled themselves away with effort.
Well, there you have it, folks. Jasper Hawes will serve a true life sentence for his crimes, Tom said with a slight twist of his lips. I know that many people were hoping he would be sentenced to death, Claire. Despite the justice's lofty words, I do believe that some people's minds won't be changed in that account.
You may be right, Tom. Claire looked a little unnerved by that. But that doesn't mean they're right. The sentence, while not as harsh as it could be, still affords justice. Though from what we all know about Jasper Hawes, not being a shifter might be punishment enough. Tom turned to the secondary camera as he said, "While we will be bringing on guests who have much more to say on the sentencing, our next subject is something infinitely happier. The coming wedding of our very own King Valerius and King Caden. People have a lot to say about the wedding theme." Caden turned off the television in the Emporium and adjusted the hood of his unicorn shifter sweatshirt in order to hide his face from the milling patrons. "Don't want to hear about your own wedding, Caden?" Landry snorted from her perch behind the register. He was dusting knickknacks by the front so the customers who milled around the shop were too far away to hear them. "It's not my wedding, as Shioni has made very clear, and my mother, and my father, and Tilly, and Anwar, and well, everyone, since neither me or Valerius had any different ideas. People with actual ones have got all the say." Landry snorted again. "Oh boy, that can't be good. Why do you think I'm working here incognito than at high reach, where the florists, the tailors, and the chefs can find me?" he asked, flapping his arms. But Landry's expression behind her wall of hair softened. "We both know you came here to make sure I was okay." Caden bit his lower lip. "You wouldn't take the day off and come to the castle, so..." He shrugged. "I came to you. Your name isn't on that list, Landry. You know that, right?" "Of course. You made sure of that, as did King Valerius and Shioni, though I wonder if it should have been." She hunched over on her seat. "You should be here, Landry. You more than made up for what you did," Caden assured her. "I'm just sorry about Ross and Harvey. They repented, but they did a lot of terrible things that let Jasper get away with it for ages longer than he should have," Landry sighed. "The boys understand. Their sentences are far lighter than they would have been if you hadn't spoken on their behalf." "Yeah, well, I was glad I could help," Caden muttered and scuffed a foot. "You've done more than that," Landry practically shouted. When people looked over, she quickly lowered her voice and said, "Practical lifers and Humans First recognize that you're trying to address the inequality between shifters and humans. More and more will have to open their eyes the more you do. Even if they don't, if the reasons for their anger are assuaged, I hope they will stop people like Jasper Hawes from preying upon them," Caden said. "People are people, Caden. Some of them are idiots, no matter what. But you're definitely making it better for everyone," she said. "And how are you doing now that you're the owner and operator of Wally Nut's Emporium?" he asked her. After Wally had officially become his counselor, It was determined that running a shifter-based merchandising operation might be a little bit of a conflict of interest.
Not to mention that I won't have time to operate the shop effectively, Wally had said, all quivering mustaches. So I'm giving the shop to Landry.
What? To me? Landry had been shocked to her core. It had just been a few weeks since the Behemoth was defeated when they had this conversation. She, Wally, Rose, and Caden had been eating breakfast, with lots of bacon, on one of the balconies. There was cream cheese on her upper lip when Wally had made this announcement.
Yes, you. There's no one else I would trust with the Emporium, Landry. And when your brothers get out, you'll have jobs to offer them if they want them. Wally shrugged.
Wally, I don't know what to say, Landry mumbled. I don't deserve this. Of course you do, and you're going to say yes, Rose insisted as she cut up strawberries on her plate. Landry, take it from someone who's done worse and somehow has been given a second chance. Take it. Do good with it. Make a difference.
Now I remember a girl who looked just like you, who didn't think anything could ever change. Wally winked at Rose. So, who are you, Missy?
Rose threw a bit of croissant at him, which Wally managed to catch in his mouth and eat like the rat shifter he was. You have to admit, Wally, that you and Caden and all the Bryces are pretty different, Rose said as she chewed a croissant laden with clotted cream and fresh strawberries. They give chances to people that others wouldn't dare to. You're pretty extraordinary yourself, Rose, Caden said. You were open to believing us and reaching back. Yeah, you guys are all extraordinary. Unlike me, Landry said with a sigh. Landry, changing one's mind is the most extraordinary thing to do, and you did it. When everyone was telling you that red was blue and blue was red, you held firm against them, even though you were alone. I only felt alone. You guys were always there with me, Landry said with a smile. My parents are still in the Humans First camp and can't forgive the fact that my brothers are going to jail. I'm sorry, Landry, if you need a place to stay. But Landry was shaking her head. If I'm going to own the Emporium, I can afford a place to stay. Don't worry, Caden, though I might camp out here until I find a good lease. Of course, you can stay here as long as you want to, Caden assured her. Thanks, Landry beamed as she crunched a piece of bacon. I better not stay here too long. I'll grow too big to leave. Rose patted her stomach happily. I say, my stomach is full of bacon and love. Bacon and love? Caden snorted.
Bacon is love, Wally corrected.
They all picked up their juice and clinked them as they cried, Bacon is love, and devolved into laughter. Landry had only stayed a few weeks at the castle, but Caden had made the most of the time with her, even as tons of duties as the White Dragon King pulled him this way and that. But he found he could balance what he needed to do as one of the most powerful shifters in the world with family and friends. They were what kept him focused and what mattered. Until the wedding planning started. And then Caden was looking for any excuse to escape it. Not because he didn't want to marry Valerius. He so very much did. He dreamed of their wedding. He looked meaningfully into Valerius's eyes for hours. He adored every second with the Black Dragon King. But more than the reports on world events were the wedding reports. So that was partially why he was in a pink unicorn hoodie with a horn on the hood, hiding in the Emporium. No one would find him here. A woman came up with arms loaded with plushies. She also had a basket overflowing with them. I got every color, didn't I? She asked Landry. My little girl will be so upset if she doesn't have a complete set. Caden perused the basket and said, You're missing Memphis, ma'am, the green dragon. I'll go get you one. Oh, thank you so much, dear. She gave him a relieved smile, but then stiffened a little bit. But the green dragon, that's Alarian, right? Caden stopped in mid-step and turned towards her, even as he tugged his hood down lower. Yes, it is. He's the Green Dragon King. Isn't he the one imprisoning all his people? Maybe I shouldn't get the green one for her if that's true, she said uncertainly. Caden smiled. That was true. But King Alarian has changed course. The citizens that were imprisoned have almost all been released. They are being compensated as best as one can and given assistance as they re-enter society. The Blue and Red Dragon Queens are assisting him in this. Oh, the woman brightened considerably. Well, then that's good. I guess I will get the Green Dragon too. Believe me, ma'am, that without the Green Dragon King, we all wouldn't be here right now, Caden said. He left her blinking in confusion
As he hustled off to get a green dragon plushie for her, he soon found out why she had missed out on that color. Despite it being full earlier, he swore he filled it. The display for the green dragon plushies was empty. He frowned. Then he saw there was a trail of the plushies leading to the back of the shop and into the warehouse. Had some little kid grabbed them all and run back into the warehouse? Frowning deeply, Caden quickened his steps and entered the warehouse, not sure what he was expecting to see. But 2 wolfhounds being told to fetch the green dragon plushies was not it. "Alarian?" Caden cried with enthusiasm. The green dragon king's arms were full of plushies, but he flashed a magnificent grin at Caden. "I am, little dragon. Did you miss me?" "You know I did, and you brought your dogs!" Caden cried as he took in the magnificent wolfhounds that came loping back with plushies in their mouths. "Of course! I would not be without them this visit. I told them all about you, and they had to come," Alarian told him. "Plus, they are very good tracking hounds." What?" Caden asked. A set of powerful hands fell on Caden's shoulders. "Yes, Caden. Alarian was convinced the dogs would find you. He was right. We had to track our prey down." Caden twisted around to see Valerius's handsome face with a devilish grin on it. He couldn't help leaning in for a kiss. "You didn't need dogs to find me. I mean, I haven't been avoiding the fitting with Anwar." Valerius tipped his head to the side. "No, not at all." Caden swallowed. Have you seen the fabrics he likes?" "Oh, yes, Caden," Larry said with a chuckle. "I have." "Which is why you were not getting out of this torture with us." Alarian laughed as he sent another plushie flying that the dogs took after. "Hey, you have to buy those, you know. Landry needs the rent money," Caden cried. "Oh, don't worry. I will buy them all," Alarian grinned. "My dogs love to rip the black dragon's wings off. That pleases me for some reason." Valerius scowled at the Green Dragon King. "I am wondering why I missed you, Alarian." "Because I am your best man, and your best friend, and the best of the best in all things." Alarian's grin grew brighter. "So you keep telling me," Valerius murmured. Then he focused on Caden. "Now that I've found you, Caden, I'm not letting you go." "And you don't have to. I'll do the fitting with you," Caden sighed. "Good." Valerius looked relieved. "It is the only thing making Anwar happy with Fidel." He grimaced and did not finish the sentence. Feeling a stab of guilt, Caden quickly said, "Of course. What are clothes after all? I mean, nobody cares about clothes. And if he wants us to wear fuchsia, well, that's fine, right?" "Right." "Don't worry," Alarian said with a laugh. "Raziel will make a big pyre out of them at the end of the wedding and set them on fire. That's when the real party will begin."
I hope you're enjoying Dragon's Reign so far. Dragon's Reign is free for you to enjoy, but not free for us to make. There is a whole team working with me for audio editing, artwork, graphic design, and custom music. Most YouTube channels and podcasts have sponsors and take ads, but because of the kind of content we make, we can't run ads or get sponsors. Instead, we have other ways you can support me and the team behind this gay romance audiobook. One easy way is to buy or borrow my books from Amazon. They are all gay romance set in alternative worlds with vampires or shifters and other magical beings. You may not know that even if you borrow books with your Kindle Unlimited subscription at Amazon, they are free for you, but they still earn us money. The books are published under the name Ex Aratare, which actually means Raythe in Romanian. And if you love audiobooks, you can get professionally narrated versions of every one of my books on audible.com. The link to my author page is in the description below, as well as to the first book of the series I think you'll really like. Thank you so much for your support. People like you enable me and the team to keep writing these stories of gay romance, magic, monsters, and true love, and producing this very fun podcast for everyone. Thank you.